You are not broken. You are not weak. You are not failing at life. You are simply untrained. And that truth changes everything. Because what is untrained can be trained. What is undisciplined can be shaped. And what feels fragile can become unshakable if you know how to work with it instead of fighting it. I am speaking to you, the one who feels exhausted by emotions that seem to rise without permission, the one who gets pulled into anger, anxiety, disappointment, and self-doubt like waves that never stop crashing. You think something is wrong with you, but the real problem is not who you are, it is how you have been taught to respond to the world. You were never shown how to master your inner life, so you learn to survive instead. And survival is loud, reactive, and always on edge. I remember when every careless word could ruin my entire day, when a small comment could stay in my head for hours, when someone else's mood had more control over me than my own intentions. That was not weakness, it was lack of training. A mind that has not been trained reacts automatically, just like an untrained body stumbles when asked to move with precision. You would never expect someone who has never lifted weights to suddenly carry heavy loads with ease. Yet, you expect yourself to carry emotional weight without ever having learned how. That is not fair to you. And it is time you stop blaming yourself for what you were never taught. Your emotions are not enemies. They are signals. They rise to tell you something is happening inside you, but they are not commands you must obey. An untrained mind confuses feelings with instructions. So when anger appears, it thinks it must attack. When fear appears, it thinks it must retreat. And when sadness appears, it thinks it must collapse. A trained mind observes those same emotions and says, I see you, but you do not decide what I do next. This is where your power begins, in the space between what you feel and how you act. That space is small when you are untrained, but it can grow wide and strong when you practice. I want you to understand something deeply. You have been living on emotional autopilot. Life happens, people speak, events unfold, and your nervous system reacts before your wisdom has a chance to speak. That is why you feel out of control. Not because you lack strength, but because you have never learned how to slow down the reaction and choose the response. Training your mind is not about becoming cold or detached. It is about becoming intentional. It is about deciding that you will no longer let every external trigger pull your inner world in a different direction. Look at your life honestly. How many times have you said something you regretted because you reacted too fast? How many times have you let someone else's behavior steal your peace for hours or days? How many times have you replayed conversations in your head, wishing you had stayed calm instead of losing control? These moments are not proof that you are weak. They are proof that you have not yet built the mental muscle of pause. And like any muscle, it grows through repetition, not through shame. Training begins with awareness. You cannot change what you do not notice. The first step is learning to catch yourself in the moment when emotion starts to rise. That tightening in your chest, that heat in your face, that rush of thoughts telling you to defend, to attack, to run. That is the moment you practice. Not later, not when it is over, but right there. You pause, you breathe, and you remind yourself that you are not required to react just because you feel something. That pause is the beginning of your freedom. I know you have been taught that emotions are something that happen to you, like the weather, unpredictable and uncontrollable. That is not entirely true. Feelings arise, yes, but how long they stay and how much power they have depends on what you do with them. An untrained mind feeds every emotion with attention and stories, turning small sparks into raging fires. A trained mind lets emotions pass through without building a home for them. This is not suppression. It is selection. You choose what deserves your energy. You are not meant to be a prisoner of your moods. You are meant to be the one who steers them. Imagine how different your life becomes when you no longer feel hijacked by every insult, every disappointment, every unexpected change. Imagine waking up knowing that no matter what happens, you can remain steady. That steadiness is not something you are born with. It is something you build. Just like strength in the body, strength in the mind comes from repeated, intentional effort. Right now, your mind has been trained by chaos, by stress, by constant stimulation, by endless comparison. You have been conditioned to react, not to reflect, but conditioning can be undone. New habits can replace old ones. Every time you choose to pause instead of explode, every time you choose to breathe instead of panic, every time you choose to observe instead of judge, you are retraining your mind. And those small choices, repeated daily, change who you become. I want you to stop thinking of yourself as someone who is emotionally fragile. You are not fragile. You are just inexperienced in self-mastery. There is a huge difference. A fragile thing breaks under pressure. An untrained thing can grow stronger. And you, right now, are standing at the beginning of your training. This is not a sentence. It is an invitation. You get to become someone who does not get shaken easily. Someone who does not get pulled into every storm. Someone who can remain calm while the world stays loud. From this moment on, I want you to carry one simple truth with you. You are not weak. You are untrained. And training is something you can start today. Every trigger is a practice session. Every difficult person is a teacher. Every uncomfortable emotion is an opportunity to build the muscle of choice. And with every choice, you step closer to the version of you that is steady, clear, and powerful inside. I am not asking you to be perfect. I am asking you to be aware. I am not asking you to never feel. I am asking you to never surrender control of your actions to what you feel. This is the foundation of everything that comes next. Before you learn how to ignore insults, how to set boundaries, how to let go of anger, you must understand this first. You are not broken. You are in training. And training changes everything. Every time something upsets you, your mind immediately looks outward for someone to blame. And most of the time it chooses the nearest person, the careless speaker, the rude stranger, the disappointing friend, or the unfair situation. I used to do the same thing. I used to say, "You made me angry. You ruined my mood. You destroyed my day." But the truth that changed my life was simple and uncomfortable. No one makes you feel anything. They offer a stimulus, but you choose the reaction. And that choice, whether you are aware of it or not, is always yours. When you truly understand this, something powerful happens inside you. You stop being a victim of circumstances and you start becoming the author of your inner world. You realize that life is constantly throwing events in your direction, but none of them have direct access to your peace. They have to go through you first. They knock on the door of your mind, and you decide whether to let them in. Most people open that door automatically, without thinking, letting every small inconvenience, every careless word, and every rude gesture take control of their emotions. That is not fate. That is habit. An untrained mind reacts. A trained mind chooses. That is the difference between chaos and calm. When someone cuts you off in traffic, when a colleague dismisses your idea, when a stranger speaks without respect, the event itself is neutral. It does not carry anger inside it. The anger is something your mind creates in response. The moment you see this, you gain power. You realize that between what happens and how you feel, there is a space. And inside that space lives your freedom. I know this sounds abstract, but let me bring it into your real life. Think about the last time you were triggered. Maybe someone criticized you. Maybe someone ignored you. Maybe something did not go the way you planned. The feeling appeared so fast that it felt automatic, but it was not inevitable. It was learned. Somewhere along the way, you taught your mind that certain situations mean danger, disrespect, or failure, and your nervous system reacts as if you are being attacked. But now, you are older, wiser, and capable of choosing a different response. When I started practicing this, everything changed. I began to notice the exact moment when emotion rose. There was a split second where I could either let it take over or step back and observe it. At first, that space was tiny, almost invisible. But the more I practiced pausing, breathing, and not reacting immediately, the larger that space became. And inside that space, I found calm. You will find it too if you are willing to practice. Your reaction is not who you are. It is simply a habit, and habits can be changed. You do not need to become a different person. You need to become a more conscious one. Every time you pause instead of reacting, you are telling your brain that it does not need to go into fight or flight mode. You are teaching it that you are safe, that you are in control, and that not every situation is an emergency. Over time, this rewires how you experience the world. Imagine walking through your day without being pulled into emotional storms. Someone speaks harshly, and you hear the words without letting them burn you. Something goes wrong, and you adjust without collapsing. This is not about being numb. It is about being sovereign. You feel what you feel, but you do not let it dictate your behavior. That is emotional mastery, and it starts with one simple habit: the pause. When you feel triggered, stop for a moment. Breathe. Name the emotion. Say to yourself, this is anger. This is frustration. This is disappointment. By naming it, you create distance from it. You move from being inside the emotion to observing it. That small shift changes everything. Then ask yourself a simple question. How do I want to respond in a way that protects my peace? Not how do I want to react, but how do I choose to respond? This is where your values come in. This is where your long-term well-being begins to guide your actions. I am not telling you that this is easy. It takes practice, patience, and self-awareness. You will forget sometimes. You will react. You will say things you wish you had not said. That is part of the training. Do not use those moments to shame yourself. Use them to learn. Every mistake shows you where you still need to grow. The more you practice choosing your reactions, the more you will notice how powerful you actually are. People will still behave badly. Life will still surprise you, but none of it will have the same hold over you. You will become someone who moves through the world with steadiness instead of being tossed around by every wave. Your reactions are your choice. Not in theory, but in practice. Every single day, in every interaction, you are given the chance to choose calm over chaos, clarity over confusion, and strength over impulse. And each time you make that choice, you become a little more free. You feel disappointed because you care, because you show up, because when someone needs you, you try to be there. And deep inside, you expect the world to meet you with the same level of honesty and effort. I used to think this way too. I used to believe that if I was kind, people would be kind back. That if I was loyal, others would return that loyalty. And that if I treated people with respect, they would do the same. When they did not, it felt like betrayal. But what I was really feeling was the pain of my own expectations collapsing. Most of the frustration you carry does not come from what people do. It comes from what you thought they should do. You imagine how you would behave in their place, and you hold them to that standard. But people do not live by your values, your experiences, or your emotional depth. They live by their own. When you expect them to be like you set yourself up for disappointment. Not because they are bad, but because they are different. I had to learn this the hard way. I would give more than I should, care more than was returned, and then feel hurt when the balance was not equal. But the truth was simple. I was projecting my nature onto others and then punishing them in my mind when they did not match it. Once I saw this, everything shifted. I realized that people are not here to fulfill my expectations. They are here to be who they are. This does not mean you accept disrespect or tolerate mistreatment. It means you stop expecting people to act from your heart instead of their own. Some people are distracted. Some are selfish. Some are wounded. Some are simply unaware. When they disappoint you, it is rarely personal. It is usually a reflection of their inner world. When you understand this, you stop taking everything so deeply. Imagine how much lighter you would feel if you stopped demanding that people meet your emotional standards. When a friend forgets, when a colleague is careless, when someone does not show up the way you hoped, you can say to yourself, "This is who they are, not a judgment of who I am." That shift removes the sting. Expectations are silent contracts you make in your own mind. Other people never sign them, yet you get angry when they break them. Let that sink in. You are often upset, not because someone did something wrong. When you release that imaginary contract, you free yourself. I stopped measuring people by how I would behave. I started seeing them as they were. Some became easier to understand. Some became easier to distance myself from. But none of them controlled my peace anymore. When you let go of expectations, you stop being emotionally dependent on other people's behavior. You become steady. You become grounded. You stop hoping people will change so you can feel better. You start choosing how to feel regardless, and that is real freedom. Every argument begins the same way, with a small disagreement that feels harmless at first. But inside you something tightens, and a quiet voice whispers that you must defend yourself, that you must prove you are right, that if you do not, something about you will be diminished. I used to listen to that voice. I used to fight for every point, every detail, every version of the story, as if my worth depended on it. But all that fighting never brought me peace. It only left me tired and disconnected from the people around me. The need to be right is not strength. It is fear wearing the mask of confidence. It is the fear that if someone sees things differently, you might lose control, respect, or value. But the truth is, no one becomes smaller by allowing another perspective to exist. You become larger when you can hold your truth without needing to crush someone else's. I remember how many times I argued over things that did not matter. How many relationships were strained because I was more focused on winning than on understanding. Being right felt good for a moment, but the cost was always heavier than the reward. I lost connection, I lost calm, and I lost time I would never get back. When I finally learned to let go of the need to win, I gained something far more valuable: peace. When someone challenges you, it does not mean they are attacking you. It means they see the world through a different lens. You can choose to be curious about that, or you can choose to be defensive. Curiosity leads to growth. Defensiveness leads to endless conflict. Every time you feel that urge to argue, pause and ask yourself, do I want to be right, or do I want to be at peace? That single question can change the entire direction of a conversation. Letting go of the need to be right does not mean you have no opinions. It means you are no longer enslaved by them. You can express your view without clinging to it. You can listen without feeling threatened. You can disagree without turning it into a battle. This is what emotional maturity looks like. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is calm, steady, and self-assured. I began to notice how often people argue not to find truth, but to protect their ego. They want to feel superior, to feel validated, to feel seen, but that validation never lasts. It always needs another argument, another victory, another person to defeat. When you step out of that cycle, you realize how empty it really is. You do not have to correct every mistake. You do not have to challenge every opinion. You do not have to prove your intelligence to anyone. Your value is not measured by how many debates you win. It is measured by how well you protect your inner peace. When you let go of the need to be right, conversations become lighter. Relationships become safer. You stop walking into every interaction, ready to fight. You start listening, understanding, and choosing your battles wisely. There is a quiet confidence that comes from knowing who you are without needing to convince anyone else. That confidence is not shaken by disagreement. It does not need applause. It rests in its own truth. And when you find that place inside yourself, you will realize that peace is worth far more than being right. There was a time when every opinion felt like a verdict, when a careless remark or a critical tone could make me question my entire worth. And maybe you know that feeling too. You share an idea, you show a part of yourself, and one dismissive reaction makes you shrink inside. In that moment, it feels as if someone else has the authority to decide who you are. But here is the truth you need to hear. Your worth is not up for debate. It was never placed on the table for others to judge. It is something you carry inside you, untouched by praise or criticism. When you let other people define you, you give away the most important part of yourself. You start living as if you are on trial, constantly trying to prove that you are good enough, smart enough, worthy enough. That is an exhausting way to live, because the world will always have another opinion, another comparison, another standard. No matter how much you achieve, someone will always have something to say. If you tie your identity to their voices, you will never feel secure. I had to learn to separate feedback from self-worth. There is a difference between someone commenting on your work and someone defining who you are. One can help you grow. The other will destroy your confidence if you let it. When someone criticizes something you did, it does not mean you are a failure. When someone does not like you, it does not mean you are unlovable. Their reactions are reflections of their own preferences, their own experiences, their own wounds. They are not mirrors of your value. Think about how often you replay conversations in your head, analyzing what you said, how you sounded, how you were perceived. You do this because you believe your worth is fragile, that it can be damaged by a single moment. But your worth is not glass. It does not shatter because someone does not approve of you. It is more like a foundation, solid and steady, even when the surface shakes. When you truly understand this, something shifts in the way you move through the world. You stop performing for approval. You stop shrinking to avoid criticism. You stop pretending to be someone you are not just to be accepted. You become more honest, more grounded, and more at peace. You can still care about others, but you no longer need their validation to feel whole. I remember the relief I felt when I stopped asking myself whether people liked me and started asking whether I liked who I was becoming. That one change turned my attention inward, where real growth happens. When you build a strong relationship with yourself, other people's opinions lose their power. They become information, not judgment. You can listen, take what is useful, and let the rest pass by without leaving a mark. Your value does not rise when someone praises you. and it does not fall when someone criticizes you. It remains the same, steady and intact. The more you remind yourself of this, the less reactive you become. You do not feel the need to defend yourself at every turn. You do not feel crushed by every negative comment. You stand in a quiet confidence that does not need constant reinforcement. Living this way is not about arrogance. It is about self-respect. It is about knowing that you are enough, even while you are still growing. You can want to improve without believing you are broken. You can accept feedback without believing you are flawed. When you stop putting your worth on trial, you free yourself from the emotional roller coaster of seeking approval. You become steadier, calmer, and more authentic. And in that authenticity, you find a kind of peace that no one can take from you. Your energy is the most precious currency you own, more limited than time and more fragile than strength, because when it is spent carelessly, everything in your life begins to suffer. I am speaking to you, the one who feels constantly tired, not because you do not sleep, but because too many people, too many demands, and too many unspoken expectations keep pulling from you. You wake up already feeling behind, already feeling needed, already feeling stretched. That is not a sign that you are weak. It is a sign that you have not been protecting yourself. Boundaries are not something you build to push people away. They are something you build to stay whole. Without them, you slowly lose yourself in other people's problems, other people's emotions, and other people's priorities. You start living a life that is reactive instead of intentional. You say yes when you want to say no. You stay silent when you want to speak. You give when you have nothing left to give. And over time, that quiet self-betrayal turns into exhaustion, resentment, and emotional numbness. I used to think that being a good person meant always being available, always being understanding, always being willing to sacrifice my own needs. But that belief cost me my peace. People learned that I would always show up, always listen, always help, even when it drained me. They did not mean to harm me, but they also had no reason to stop, because I never taught them where the line was. The truth is simple. If you do not define your limits, someone else will define them for you, and they will almost always be wider than what is healthy for you. Setting boundaries requires courage. It means you are willing to disappoint someone in order to be honest with yourself. It means you are willing to say, I care about you, but I also care about me. Many people confuse boundaries with rejection, but they are not the same. A boundary is a statement of self-respect. It is saying, this is how much I can give without losing myself. When you communicate that calmly and clearly, you create relationships that are more balanced and more real. You are not responsible for fixing everyone. You are not obligated to absorb every emotional storm that passes through your life. You can support others without carrying their weight. You can be kind without being consumed. When you protect your energy, you are not becoming selfish. You are becoming sustainable. You are making sure that when you do give, it comes from a place of strength instead of depletion. Notice how often you feel irritated or tired after certain interactions. That is not random. That is your nervous system telling you that too much was taken. Instead of ignoring that signal, honor it. It is guiding you toward healthier limits. Every time you listen to it and adjust, you become more aligned with yourself. When you begin to set boundaries, some people may resist. They were comfortable with the old version of you who never said no. That does not mean you are doing something wrong. It means you are changing. Growth often feels uncomfortable to those who benefited from your silence. But the people who truly respect you will adapt. They will learn to meet you in a healthier way. Protecting your energy changes the quality of your life. You start to feel lighter. You stop running on empty. You have more patience, more clarity, and more presence. You are no longer constantly overwhelmed by other people's expectations. You are finally able to focus on what truly matters to you. Boundaries are not about creating distance. They are about creating space for what is important. When you protect your energy, you protect your peace. And when your peace is protected, everything in your life begins to work better. You have spent more time than you realize living inside other people's minds, wondering what they think of you, how you are being judged, and whether you are enough in their eyes. I did the same for a long time. Every look, every comment, every silence felt like a message about my value. But that way of living is a quiet prison. When you allow the opinions of others to decide how you feel about yourself, you hand them the keys to your emotional life. The truth is simple and uncomfortable. Everyone sees you through their own filters, shaped by their fears, their experiences, and their insecurities. What they think of you is not a clear picture of who you are. It is a reflection of who they are. When someone praises you, it feels good, but it does not define you. When someone criticizes you, it hurts, but it does not describe you. Both are temporary echoes, not truths. I used to chase approval. I would adjust my words, my behavior, even my dreams, to fit what I thought others wanted. I believed that if people liked me, I would feel safe. But no amount of approval ever created lasting peace. There was always another person to impress, another standard to meet, another opinion to fear. The moment I stopped needing everyone to agree with me, I felt lighter. I could finally hear my own voice. Detaching from the opinions of others does not mean you stop listening. It means you stop letting every voice live rent-free in your mind. You learn to filter. You take what helps you grow and you release what only exists to judge. This is not arrogance. It is emotional intelligence. You recognize that not every opinion deserves your attention. Think about how many times you have held back from doing something you wanted because you were afraid of being judged. How many dreams have you delayed because you imagined what people might say? That fear cost you more than any criticism ever could. When you live for approval, you shrink. When you live by your values, you expand. The more you anchor yourself in what matters to you, the less power other people's opinions have. You begin to move with quiet confidence. You are no longer easily shaken by praise or blame. You know who you are, and that knowing becomes your shield. You do not need to be understood by everyone. You need to be honest with yourself. That is where real freedom begins. Silence is often misunderstood as weakness, but in truth, it is one of the strongest tools you can ever master. I learned this only after years of speaking too quickly, defending myself too loudly, and reacting too emotionally whenever I felt challenged. Every sharp word I threw into an argument only fed the fire and left me feeling empty afterward. It was only when I stopped responding to every provocation that I discovered how powerful silence really is. When someone tries to provoke you, they are not just speaking, they are seeking a reaction. They want to pull you into their emotional state, into their anger, their frustration, or their insecurity. The moment you react, they win. Because now your inner world is moving according to their rhythm. Silence breaks that rhythm. It removes the fuel that keeps negativity alive. When you do not respond, you remain in control of yourself. And that is the highest form of power. Silence does not mean you are afraid to speak. It means you are choosing when your words truly matter. Most conflicts grow not because of what was said, but because of how quickly and emotionally it was said. When you pause, breathe, and remain quiet, you create space for clarity. In that space, you can see what is really happening, and you can decide whether it is even worth your energy to engage. I began to notice that many arguments did not need to happen at all. A careless remark, a sarcastic tone, or a passive-aggressive comment used to pull me in immediately. Now, I let it pass. Not because it does not matter, but because my peace matters more. Silence sends a message that you are not easily shaken. It tells the other person that their attempt to disturb you has failed. There is also a deeper kind of silence, the one you practice inside yourself. When your mind wants to replay hurtful words or imagine what you should have said, you gently bring it back to stillness. You do not keep the argument alive in your head. You let it fade. This inner silence is where true freedom lives. Silence is not avoidance. It is selection. You choose what deserves your attention and what does not. When you master this, you become calm in situations that once overwhelmed you. You become someone who does not need to explain or justify themselves constantly. Your quiet confidence speaks for you. In a world that thrives on noise and reaction, your silence becomes a shield. It protects your energy, your focus, and your dignity. When you stop feeding every conflict with your words, you discover how much lighter life feels. And in that quiet space, you find the strength that was always inside you. Anger feels powerful, but it is one of the heaviest emotions you can carry because it keeps you tied to moments that have already passed. I know how easy it is to replay a hurtful conversation in your mind, to imagine what you should have said, to wish things had gone differently. That habit slowly drains your energy and traps you in a version of the past that no longer exists. This is why gratitude and letting go are not soft ideas. They are powerful tools for freedom. Gratitude changes the way your mind sees reality. When you focus only on what is wrong, your world shrinks into a place of constant dissatisfaction. But when you deliberately notice what is still good, still working, still present in your life, something shifts inside you. You cannot feel thankful and bitter at the same time. One pushes the other out. Even in difficult moments, there is always something that remains. Your breath, your ability to choose, your chance to begin again. When you remember that, anger loses its grip. Letting go is often misunderstood. It does not mean pretending that nothing hurt. It means refusing to let that hurt define you. When you hold on to resentment, you give the past the power to control your present. You carry someone else's behavior inside your mind long after the moment has ended. Letting go is the decision to take that power back. It is saying, I will not keep hurting myself over what cannot be changed. I learned that holding on to anger feels like holding on to fire. You think it will burn the person who wronged you, but it only burns you. When you release it, you feel lighter, not because the past disappears, but because you are no longer carrying it. Gratitude and letting go work together. Gratitude grounds you in what you still have. Letting go frees you from what no longer serves you. Together, they create peace. You stop being trapped in what happened and start living in what is possible. Every time you choose to be thankful for something small, every time you release a grudge instead of feeding it, you are training your mind to move toward calm instead of chaos. Over time, this becomes who you are. You become someone who does not cling to pain, who does not dwell on disappointment, who knows how to release and renew. This is not weakness. It is wisdom. When you let go, you do not lose anything of value. You gain your life back. You are standing at the edge of a new way of being, one where your peace is no longer at the mercy of other people's moods, words, or choices. Everything you have learned has led you here, to this moment where you finally understand that nothing outside of you has the authority to decide how you feel unless you give it that permission. You are not here to be pushed around by every situation. You are here to live from a place of inner stability. That is what it means to be unbothered. Being unbothered does not mean you do not care. It means you care wisely. You choose what deserves your attention and what does not. You no longer waste your energy on every small irritation or every careless remark. You recognize that most things are not personal, and even when they are, they do not have to live inside you. You let them pass, the same way clouds move across the sky, leaving no lasting mark. I want you to notice how different this feels. When you stop reacting to everything, you start responding to what truly matters. Your mind becomes quieter. Your emotions become steadier. You are no longer pulled into drama or conflict unless it aligns with your values. This is not emotional numbness. It is emotional intelligence. You still feel deeply, but you do not drown in what you feel. You have learned to pause before you react, to question your assumptions, to release the need to be right, to protect your energy, and to let go of what no longer serves you. These are not small changes. They are the foundation of a powerful inner life. Each time you practice them, you strengthen the part of you that is calm, clear, and grounded. Life will continue to bring challenges. People will still have opinions. Situations will still be unpredictable. But now, you know something that changes everything. You always have a choice. You can choose to be dragged into emotional storms, or you can choose to stand steady while they pass. The more you choose steadiness, the more natural it becomes. Being unbothered is not a destination you reach once. It is a way of living you practice every day. There will be moments when you slip, when old habits try to return. That does not mean you have failed. It means you are human. Each time you notice and realign, you grow stronger. I want you to carry this with you. Your peace is your responsibility. No one else can protect it for you. When you honor it, your entire life changes. You become more focused, more present, and more powerful in a quiet way that cannot be taken from you. You are now unbothered, not because the world is gentle, but because you are strong inside, and that strength will carry you through anything.